Hi, everyone. Happy Friday and welcome aboard. Thanks for joining us and watching in and whatever else you're doing to participate. It's Sam here. I have a special guest who I'll introduce in a moment. Or I guess I'll go ahead and do that right now. If you didn't know already, I have here published novelist Mark R. Harris, but I've always called him Dad instead of that. So I've introduced you, I guess, or in announcing this event and trying to promote it and such. I've described you as the man who taught me everything I know about writing, which I don't know if that's entirely true, but but I guess
Hey,
like,
I'll,
but I guess like the alphabet and like what books are and all those things that I think you probably taught me. So some of those foundational principles that we've built
yeah,
upon since then. So yeah, definitely,
I'll,
yeah. The classics that teach you how to read and rhyming, things like that. The
yeah.
Dr. Seuss ABCs, Barney's opposites, I guess.
Oh, wow. Now you're getting into some great high literary stuff here. Yeah,
Yeah. Maybe too advanced for our talk today. Um,
definitely.
but anyway, for anyone who didn't know, I'm writing a novel or working on novels, but also trying to, I guess, engage others in creative writing related discussions to figure out what I can learn from them and what we all can learn from them in the writing process. And I won't steal my dad's thunder, but he has published two novels now and has also been teaching writing and fiction for a long time. So there's that too. So I thought I'd have him on today to hear from his experience and see what we all can glean from it. So rather than me talking and introducing you anymore, why don't you tell us, I guess, about your history with writing? I know you've written things over the years, but I guess
Sure.
primarily your creative fiction in the last few years and
Okay.
what you've done so far.
Yeah, sure. I start out in terms of creative writing, start out writing poetry, and I had a few poems published. This was, yeah, I guess several years ago. And last poem I had published was about 10 years ago. And then I kind of wanted to get into something different. So I always wanted to try to write a novel, and I never really succeeded. But yeah, I want to try my hand in a novel. So there's this thing called NaNoWriMo. I think you know about it. Yeah.
Mhm.
And you had been doing it for a couple of years, and then you and I went to do it one year. I decided, okay, I'm going to try this, writing a novel, 50,000 words in a month. Sure, why not? I didn't really know if I would do it, but so I remember you and I went to, I think it was Little Dickens in
Oh,
Lynchburg. And,
that's right.
yeah, in a little cafe area there, and sat down right. And that's really where my first novel started. I was just kind of free writing and letting whatever thoughts I had flow, and that eventually turned into the first chapter. And then it took me about 5 years to complete that book, off and on, because there's mostly working on in the summer. And so that was published in 2015.
And
And then
what's that one called?
that is Fire in the Bones.
Nice.
Ta-da! Yeah, which is the one that's on the advertisement for our little talk here.
I was gonna grab my copies. I forgot to, so I'm glad you did. Yeah,
Hey, sure.
yeah.
And then, yeah, then I wrote a second novel after that, which came a little more quickly and easily because it was a sequel, and I kind of had the novel writing thing. Not that you really have it down, but it was easier for me the second time. So that took 2.5 years. That came out in spring of 2018. That's called Now You See Her. And yeah, now I'm working on a third one. So
I forgot that NaNoWriMo was how you got into it. I remember us doing that together vaguely.
yeah,
But I know you had always wanted to, I guess, write stuff, but I forgot that was how. Um,
yeah,
that
that's really, I owe, yeah. So I owe that to you and to
was,
NaNoWriMo.
okay, well, there you go. I guess my first full-length novel was NaNoWriMo also, which is also one that I'm not really doing much with these days. But that was probably the first time I sat down and actually finished the book, other than like shorter ones when I was younger. So
Yeah.
yeah. Um, Yeah, I also want to mention just for the audience, if you have questions, comments, anything you want to know from a published author, um, put them in the chat. We would love to answer those and address those. I have some questions too, but hopefully let's make this an event of wider participation from many. So feel free to put your comments in the chat. So you mentioned those books, Fire on the Bones, Now You See Her. Can you tell us a little bit about the genre / premise, just
Yeah, sure.
the audience knows what they're getting into?
Yeah, so if you're trying to write fiction, yeah, any publisher is going to want to know what kind of genre you're working in, and I guess you call what I do literary fiction. It's not one specific commercial genre like mystery or what have you. But both books have romance in them, but it's not like you think of romance novels today, you think of stuff that is not good. It's kind of
Yeah,
sleazy and it's
that's
not that. I mean, because the first book, the protagonist is age 6 to 14, and he does have a girlfriend by the end of the book, but
oh,
it's all
spoilers.
very kind of yeah, light and all. I mean, nothing graphic or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Then the second book, he's age pretty much through high school, 15 to 18. But yeah, I guess the first novel I was kind of thinking, okay, I want to concentrate on this boy, and I want to talk about a boy who grows up in our culture, in American culture, and um, is just sort of trying to find a solution. So he's often kind of afraid. He's often angry. He often feels alone. And this is a guy who grew up in a nominal religious home, Christian home, and like many people did back in several decades ago, which is when the first book is set. And um, he looks for security, looks for love and different things in uh, music and girls, eventually, and gets into things like smoking and drinking and stuff. And so it's sort of how some of us go along that journey and we mix things up with our religion, mix things up with our culture, kind of get all a little confused there. And along the way, good things happen, bad things happen. But he does come to some answers, and one relationship with one girl that he kind of helps him through this. So yeah, that's sort of a real brief glimpse of both books. But I guess you call it literary fiction with some romantic aspects, definitely some psychological aspects, even some spiritual aspects. So yeah, it doesn't really neatly fit into just one genre. A lot of people write just one genre, and that's great, but that's not what I do.
A lot of us have like, a mixing of genres. I mean, even genre fiction hopefully has, some elements of those other things in them often,
Yeah, that's true.
but yeah, okay, thanks. Sorry, there was a comment that just the link to this video didn't show up in the event page. It just showed up on my normal author page, Samuel N. Harris. Thanks for pointing that out, Nate. To be honest, I'm a little new to this Facebook Live thing, and still working out the bugs of it myself. So forget the technical difficulties. Well, I guess anyone who's watching now has already. I guess if you're here now, the problem is solved and you found us. But I've posted the link in the event page also, so for anyone else who wants to join. So in those stories, or in those books particularly, I guess I think I know some. I've talked to you before somewhat about your inspirations, but I'm wondering about inspirations for those stories and/or specific authors who have inspired you, or who have been influenced you. I don't know if you have consciously or unconsciously taken on the I guess model yourself after other authors. I mean, I know who some of your favorite authors are, but
Yeah,
the influences you can speak to right now.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, so let me say something about how I got the idea at first for the
Sure.
book, and yeah, I'll kind of weave in the writing influences. Um, so I listen to a lot of music. Music is often in my head. Music is a big part of the first book, and it's somewhat part of the second book, popular music. And
Other music from like that time period, like the
yeah, yeah, from that time period, that kind of
60s,
era, and
70s,
the
I guess.
60s, 70s, late 70s. So I had a song in my head which actually wasn't from that era, and it wasn't a secular song, which is what a lot of the music is that Luke listens to in the book. But it talked about kind of a purifying yourself through fire, and so that's what gave me the idea of Fire in the Bones. And I also had a memory when I was a little kid of sitting in a little country church where my dad used to take me and my sister on Sunday nights, and it was warm, I guess, because it wasn't air conditioned back then. And they had these, wish I had one here, but they had these like fans on a stick, like a little, almost a popsicle stick, and then like a square cardboard picture on top, like a picture of Jesus maybe or whatever. And these were in the pews, and you could fan yourself with these things. So I had that image, and I had sort of that developed into the first scene of a boy sitting there with his dad and listening to these things and not really understanding what was going on in the church, and he was hot and blah blah blah. And that just, I don't know, it just, one thing led to another. I started to develop more characters out of that. The boy would need parents. He's a young boy, so he'd need an occasional babysitter. Does he have siblings? From that, I'd say it was character driven. The plot kind of developed out of those characters.
It's often
But
so.
then, yeah, I mean, some fiction's more plot driven, but like thrillers and
Well, yeah.
mysteries, maybe certain mysteries. But yeah, this is definitely more character driven. That's what I do. So writing influences William Faulkner. In fact, the first draft of the book that I did had these kind of long, flowing Faulknerian sentences. And then I showed the first chapter to a couple of people, somebody who I knew had already published a novel, and somebody else who I knew taught creative writing, and said, "Hey, could you look at this and tell me what you think?" And they gave me some great feedback. But one of them said something about, these long sentences are just kind of, they're a little hard to follow, and also I kind of pulled back on that a bit. I think there's still a little bit of that Faulkner flavor in the first book.
Hard to get rid of. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I'm also a wordy person, and even when I think I've edited myself, I've cut down a bit. People still say this is too long or whatever. But
yeah, I was just telling my writing students that today. Part of being, I don't like to personalize it by saying be a good writer. I like to say part of good writing is you're willing to cut stuff, because our culture always says more is better, but
not always.
Not really with writing, right? So yeah, you got to be willing to.
In like fast-paced internet culture and all that thing. I mean, people like shorter. I mean, there's a place for long stuff, I guess. There's still a market for long books, but a lot of people like conciseness and things like that.
Yeah, I think so. So my first novel was like under 200 pages.
Okay.
That second one's a little longer, but yeah, we're not. I mean, some fantasy books today are still like thousands of pages, or thousands maybe. But yeah, generally speaking, people aren't looking for super long books.
Right. Who would win in a fist fight between William Faulkner and William Shakespeare? So I want to throw one curveball question at you.
Yeah, no, that's a great question.
That's totally random.
I'm gonna go with William Shakespeare, just because it's pretty common knowledge that William Faulkner was often drunk, and we also know he was kind of short. And I don't really know, we don't know how tall Shakespeare was,
there you go,
or whether he was a drinker, but if he wasn't, he probably had a clearer head, and yeah.
There you go. Thanks.
So that's my off the cuff answer.
You heard it from an English professor. It's canon now.
There you go.
Okay, so I've been asking people. I've been asking like some of my followers online. Different ways to ask this question. But what are your biggest struggles with the craft of writing, or biggest obstacles to overcome? I know we always say like not finding the time. That's a whole struggle for
Well,
everyone.
that's, yeah, I think
I mean,
everyone's talking about
but
that.
I want to focus on the art of writing itself. I know
Yeah,
you mentioned wordiness, but anything else you want to
yeah,
speak to?
yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it's probably a different answer for different writers because
Sure.
we have different, some of us are left brains, some of us are more right brains, some of
Yeah.
us are, this and that. But for me, it's figuring out where the book should end up. So
Okay.
like with that first book, I started going, I really got into the characters, felt like I really knew the characters. You hear people, authors saying, oh, my character did this or that, and it really surprised me. And that kind of is true because I felt like, and almost I got to the point where the characters could write some of the story in that you know your characters, you know what they're likely to do in a given situation, you know how they're going to act. But so as and it's kind of both books are also of mine are also kind of coming of age stories. So it's like that could just go on and on. You gotta come
Right.
to a dramatic kind of climactic point at some point and a conclusive point. So yeah, with both books, well, no, I didn't really struggle so much with the second book, but with the first book and with the one I'm writing now, I'm still struggling a little bit with tweaking the ending on the one I'm writing now. But yeah, it's kind of how to, what is that ending point you're going to come to? And then you got to go back and think, okay, what all do I need to be doing throughout the book that's going to, foreshadow that or lead into that or ultimately, and do I want to, any surprise turns or twists along the way? Or so, yeah, where
Right.
to end up. Some
Yeah.
people outline and all that. I'm not an outliner.
Okay.
I'm more of a, not exactly seat of the pants, but
Somewhere in the middle.
more like go with the flow. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So people are different that way.
Sure. Yeah. I know you had much of the story in mind already. I mean, I guess because it's at least partially, if not largely, based on your own childhood.
Yeah. So that helped. That was more so with the first book.
Okay.
But then after that, I kind of, I could think, well, these characters would do this or that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
But then when you have it all planned already, or when you know it already, it's like, where do you cut it off? I've had other friends ask the same thing, and
Right.
you're right. Like a biography or whatever of this, the whole life isn't necessarily like the best story. It's again
Yeah.
knowing
Right.
where to cut and what to cut. I feel like,
Right.
and I just thought of this when you were saying it. Some years ago, I read, I think F. Scott Fitzgerald's first novel, This Side of Paradise, I believe, and
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I really like it. I love The Great Gatsby, and I wanted to read some of his other ones, and it wasn't bad. It did feel pretty much like just following the protagonist through events of his life without much of the plot other than this is his life.
Right.
And I guess that's why that one didn't become his masterpiece, and
Yeah.
Gatsby did, which was a little shorter and more focused and things like that.
Right. Gatsby's so well, shaped and
Yeah.
structured. And I think, in a smaller sense, you have to think about that with each chapter too. You don't, each chapter doesn't exactly have to end on a, super cliffhanger, but you got to give the reader some reason to want to read the next chapter. So
Little
you can think
segments, yeah.
about, where am I going at the end of this chapter, and how is that going to feed into what happens after that?
That's really, yeah. I plan to talk more about plotting in the future, in hopefully a future video, because I am an outliner and a plotter, but I'm not talking about me today. So
Mhm.
thanks for that insight.
Yeah.
He in the comments asked, read
Sure.
not outlining. Would you say it'd be different if you're writing nonfiction, or I mean, have you written a lot of nonfiction in like biographical in this sense, or?
I've written nonfiction short pieces. So before I did novels, which I do now, and before I did poetry, before the novels, I wrote articles about literature. I did several of those, published several of those, and nonfiction writing I think is different, but I think still, I would think, I'm really not the expert on this, but I would think you still want each chapter to build up to some, moment or some significant thing to make your reader want to keep reading the rest. And like you said about if you're doing a biography or whatever, I think you still need to know where your end point is
Hmm.
and how you're going to get the reader to that. So yeah, even with nonfiction, like memoir is a
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
popular genre in nonfiction right now. And so you're taking your life or whatever, but you're dramatizing it kind of, and structuring it almost maybe like you would a fiction book in some ways. Again, I'm kind of speaking out of my realm here,
Oh,
but
yeah. Yeah. I took a class some years ago on creative nonfiction. That was my introduction to that, and I was doing short pieces then too, like blog posts and stuff. But
yeah,
I also the writers conference I recently attended. There was a good session on memoir, um, and I actually might be able to speak to again in a future video. But
yeah,
it's kind of like that. It's right. I mean, it's taking your own life. I mean, and writing them as if it were a story. And I guess if your book is semi-autobiographical, maybe it's close to that, but it's not quite the same. It's still fiction. But
yeah, yeah,
but but yeah. So I would think a lot of the principles from writing fiction, writing good fiction apply to memoir as well. It's just you already have the story, but you still have to present it in
yeah.
a certain way and figure out what to cut and things like that. So
Right. I mean, you still want to write very specifically and descriptively and interestingly, so
mhm.
some of the basic principles of writing would apply to fiction and nonfiction.
Well, yeah, yeah. You mentioned, or you told us about one of your biggest struggles. What's something your novels do really, really well?
I think characterization, I've had readers tell me, wow, I just really felt like I could get into this character, or my goodness, how did you portray a 6-year-old boy so well when you're, as old as you are?
Yeah,
So for me, yeah, I think everybody may have different strengths and different focuses. Characterization, and then sort of a term I'd borrow from fantasy, world building, because people would tell me, "Wow, I just felt like I was really there, in that moment, in that culture, and in that uh, the tone and the mood that you set." So I guess I worked hard on those things,
yeah,
making characters fleshed out and believable, and kind of doing my homework on some of the culture and the aspects of the time, and making sure that was all believable and so forth, and all kind of fit together. So um, yeah, I guess
that's good.
characterization and
Uh,
world building.
my most recent book had a 7-year-old boy as one of the semi-main characters, and I guess he wasn't the major character. He wasn't the main protagonist, so I didn't always get inside his head. But he was hard to write. I had to like tone down how I would usually say things and figure
Yeah,
out
yeah,
how
yeah.
7-year-olds think. And I was trying to make him like a little bit more like a little bit more advanced in his age, but not like a lot. So
Yeah,
it was hard. I
yeah.
mean,
It
I'm not
is.
I'm not
It
sure
is.
if I mean I haven't edited it yet. I don't know if it did it well every time. And
Uh-huh.
my readers or well, people have heard me in our writers group, including my wife, will tell me that world building is not my biggest strength, um, because
Okay.
yeah, I tend to go for the characters and the plot, I guess.
And,
Um,
and that's all right. I mean, different people write in different styles, and yeah, you don't.
that's true.
Everything doesn't have to have this huge, big world built.
Well, that's
Uh,
true.
and, and like we were saying earlier, some fiction is more plot driven than character driven.
Yeah,
So it's really,
but
what are your strengths? I think it's really what are your strengths, and really what do you want to write about? Not what do you think will sell. What do you want? What's important to you?
that's
Because
true.
that's going to be your most genuine writing.
Yeah, yeah. If if you uh, there was a quote I was trying to think of, and I probably won't get it right, but it was like um, if you're trying to be if you're trying to be original, then 9 times out of 10 you'll fail. But if you try to tell the truth and be authentic to your writing, then 9 times out of 10 you'll find originality or something authentic somewhere along the way.
Yeah,
Pretty sure that's C.S. Lewis, but I botched the quote. But anyway,
uh, sounds good to me.
yeah. But it's good. You had that immersive world that people can. I mean, the details really help with it, I guess. Um, so
Yeah,
so so yeah, it does. I mean, it's always interesting me when books contain like, I don't know, just, well, I know you have some pop culture references and some just like I don't know, the nitty gritty details I don't think about, but when I read them as a reader, I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. So
Yeah, you don't think about what the writer, maybe the steps the writer went through to get that information or to weave that all in. It should be kind of seamless and just seem natural. And yeah.
and I mean it's good if it feels natural.
Yeah.
Well, I think now that I'm doing these videos and I've gotten older, I'm someone who often thinks about the process, but it's good if you can read a book without and get lost in it without thinking of the process of like,
Exactly.
how does this writer do that? Or yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, very
Definitely.
cool. Yeah. I wanted to talk some about publishing and such because
Yeah.
I'm not there yet, or I mean I've done like a few printed copies, but not like official publishing, which is kind of the goal. So, well, first of all, you mentioned you had some editors or some readers look at it too. So I'm wondering, well, I guess, how did you find the right editor or publisher? Slash, how did that process go? Slash, like,
Sure.
what's the right order of things there for anyone who hasn't quite done this yet or is still getting those waters?
Okay, well, I'll tell you what I did, what worked for me. And I do think that, how I found a publisher is a way that can work for many, many people. But first, after I'd started writing the book, the first book I kind of stuck at one point. And that's when I turned to my one friend at work who had written a novel, had published a novel, and my other friend at work who was teaching creative writing. And I just gave them one chapter and I said, can you guys look at this and tell me what you think? And so, kind of beta readers. I didn't know that term back then. And I don't know, they probably did, but they were both nice enough to read it. And one of them gave me some, really just a lot of encouraging statements that helped me think, okay, I can do this. And the other one gave me a lot of really good constructive criticism, like, hey, you need to end the chapter on some kind of not exactly a cliffhanger, but there needs to be a reason why the reader wants to keep reading. So I did all that and wrote the whole book, edited a lot myself. I mean, went through many editings myself. And then I started to look for a publisher. So I didn't get a professional editor first. First, I looked for a publisher. Some people do it the other way around, but that's not what I did. So for finding a publisher, I can't say enough good about a book called Writer's Market.
I think I have my copy around here somewhere, but yeah.
Yeah, and I got an old one somewhere, but it comes out every year. Writer's Market. There you go. So Writer's Market 2020.
2020, yeah.
Yeah, and I wrote this down actually to make sure I could remember what all they did. Yeah, you get that book, it will tell you everything. It tells you how to write a query letter to a publisher, because some of them ask for like a cover letter, a query, what they call a query letter, for both agents and for publishers. It'll tell you what kinds of things they're looking for. It'll tell you whether they're looking for fiction or nonfiction. And within that, it'll tell you what kinds of things they publish, what kinds of things sometimes they're not looking for. So that narrows it down for you. You don't want to just send something to everybody. Waste your time and their time. Yeah, because you can spend a lot of money and waste a lot of time that way. So
be focused.
Yeah, right, exactly. And it'll tell you like how many manuscripts they accept out of how many get submitted every year. So it kind of, you know what your chances are. Like if they'll accept 10% of their submissions or whatever. It tells you which publishers you have to go through an agent to submit to and which ones you don't. And what else? What royalties they pay you, how many titles they publish every year, how long from accepting your manuscript till you get it published, just everything. So I went through the list of publishers in that book and I just started to narrow it down. I didn't look at any nonfiction publishers. Fiction publishers, I started to look at, okay, which ones kind of sound like they're interested in the kind of thing I'm writing, and which ones don't need an agent. I didn't want to use an agent.
I was going to ask if you use an agent or not.
And that will narrow it way down.
Yeah.
But you also, your first novel, don't set your sights too unrealistically high, I would say. It's the big publishers that we've all heard of, Random House and whatnot.
I mean, I get
that
HarperCollins.
require-
Yeah.
Yeah. And probably not going to get published by them right away. You never know. But so, yeah, I went through all that, and you can hear our dog in the background. And
Yeah,
let me close this. Let me close the door. Yeah.
that's kind of the nature of Zoom calls these days, right? Everyone can be used to them.
Yeah.
Everyone can be used to them now.
Right. It's real life. So I went through and found, I don't know, maybe 24, I think, publishers that sounded like, okay, my book kind of fits there. Out of all the publishers, just narrowed it down. And then I started submitting. And here's another thing you want to do. Every publisher has different submission guidelines. They'll say, I want to see a chapter, or I want to just see a few pages, or I want to see 20 pages, and you've got to format it this way, and you've got to send it electronically or send it by mail. You got to do this and that. Some of them want other things like an author bio, some of them don't, blah, blah, blah. So you got to follow their instructions exactly. So, or they're just going to toss it. They're not even going to look at it. So I did that. All this takes time and effort, and spent like most of the summer doing that, or even started in the spring and most of the summer. Started getting a lot of nice rejections, and so power through those, I would say too. Is how you got to keep going. You got to not let the rejections get you down. The first rejection I ever got, I was devastated, and it's like a George McFly moment. Just like,
oh yeah,
I just don't think I could take any more rejection. And then I got through that, and I was praying about this too. I was like, Lord, I'm pretty sure you wanted me to write this book, and you allowed me to write it. You gave me the talent to write it, and I'm sending it to publisher after publisher and getting rejected. Is there something I'm missing here, or you're just trying to teach me a lesson in humility? Maybe. I was wondering that at this point. And then it was like not long before the end of the summer, one publisher got back to me and said, "Hey, we like this. Could you send us some more?" And I was like, "Oh my goodness!" So I sent them some more, and they still liked it, and it went from there. So yeah, the second novel, much more briefly, I was thinking of going with that same publisher again. There were some things I wasn't real pleased with about them in terms of how much marketing they didn't really do. So I looked around at agents. I actually contacted several agents. I got a bunch of refusals. That seemed to go nowhere. So then I looked at some other publishers and ended up staying with my original publisher because they knew me. They gave me a better deal on the second book than on the first book, and it just worked out. So, but yeah, finding a publisher, you just want to, you got to do your homework. So there may be other sources besides Writer's Market, but
sure,
that's what worked for me, and I think it would work for a lot of people.
Yeah. You mentioned, or you didn't use an agent, and you didn't go to an editor at first. Did the publishers have in-house editors who review afterward, or how does?
Yeah, a lot of them do. Now, some of the smaller publishers may not have an in-house editor, and mine did not.
Okay.
So what I did was, however, they had like a small stable, I don't know what the word would be, of editors that they recommended.
Okay, yeah.
And so they left it up to you to get in touch with this person. And I found a really great editor through that. And yeah, my book definitely needed editing. And
sure.
I mean, I edited the heck out of it. And I have taught writing for years and years and years. But oh my goodness, she found so many things that I hadn't seen. You get so far into something. So future writers, yeah, don't think you don't need an editor. You do. Whoever you are, you need an editor. Either before it gets to the publisher or after. But yeah, unless you're that one perfect person, you need an editor.
I believe it. I keep doing that with my book. I keep thinking like, oh, this is like pretty good. This is getting better than it was. I got feedback from our writers group, and I started incorporating that, and I was like, okay, this is a lot better than it was before. And then I had submitted to a new editor beta reader, and she found all these things with it, and I was like, ah.
That's what you want. You want them to find the things before it gets published. Yeah.
Every stage, I think, okay, it's getting somewhere, and then there's still all these.
Yeah.
Still needs editing.
Yeah. I'm going to open the door again because the dog has stopped barking, and with the door open, I get better Wi-Fi. So okay.
Yeah. That's how I read a book about just how, like, I guess somewhat marketing, but also like just creative people, like basically how it's a long journey, and I mean even being good at the creative side or having the inspiration, whatever, is only half the battle. You still have to put in the work for publishing and editing and all that stuff afterwards. Right. The book was called Perennial Seller by Ryan Holiday. If anyone knows his name, he's doing stuff in marketing these days and publishing kind of. So it's. I'm only, I guess, at the relatively beginning stages of that myself, but I'm already seeing how it is. Nate in the comments asked, what are your thoughts about self-publishing, or do you know much about that? And I know that clearly you didn't go that route, but
I know a little bit about it. Yeah, not much. I think it's a great option. I've been part of writers groups on social media, and a lot of those folks, a lot of those writers, will do self-publishing. That's just not the route I wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
If I ended up, not finding any publisher who wanted my book, I would have done that for sure, because I wanted to get it out there. But I just wanted to try my hand first and see, if a publisher was interested. But yeah, a lot of people don't want to go that route. You have more control, obviously, over your book if you do the self-publishing. It's I don't know what all the other advantages might be, but it just depends, I guess, on what your goals are and what you're wanting to do. But it's definitely a big thing.
It is. It's good. It's going to
thriving thing. Yeah, it's a common thing today to self-publish. So sure, yeah, I don't know of anything against it.
Yeah, that's kind of my philosophy too. It's like traditional publishing is the dream. And I mean, if that doesn't work out, self-publishing is an option.
Yeah.
Not to disparage either one. Just.
No, but it's a nice option that we didn't have,
30 years ago.
Much in the past. Yeah, and it's so that's a nice alternative. Sure.
Okay. You mentioned you talked about a little bit about marketing and how much the publisher did or didn't do for you. Have you done much with that lately with like social media or anything, or?
Right, I haven't done a lot lately, but I did a lot when both books were just coming out, and then for a while afterwards with each book. Yeah, and I made a little list here because I couldn't remember everything I'd done. But one thing I did with the first book, I had little business cards made up, Fire in the Bones and my author name and my contact info and stuff, website and Facebook, YouTube channel, etc. And then I had some bookmarks made. But yeah, it depends on marketing. Okay, two things with marketing. Yeah, the nice thing about today versus the past is we now have self-publishing, which we didn't before. The sad thing about today versus the past is unless you get a big publisher, you're going to have to do a lot of the marketing yourself.
So in many ways, I guess self-publishing and publishing with a small company have that in common.
That's right. That's exactly right. Good point. Yeah. So
either way, unless you're the lucky person who hits it big.
Right. Which that's great. And then they have marketers in their employ, and they will do things for you. But I was in a my publisher had a Facebook group of Black Rose Writing publishers. That's the publisher, Black Rose Writing. And so I got into that, and that was really valuable just to get to know these people and hear from them what works for you with marketing, what doesn't work for you. So get in writers groups. I did Facebook ads. I did book signings.
Mhm.
I did now Facebook ads. You can do on your own. Book signings, of course, you got to either put yourself out there or get invited to do that. I made or had made a book trailer with each book. Found somebody who could do a pretty professional job, but was not like a big company, so it wasn't like super expensive.
Right.
Because you got to get visuals out there these days.
Mhm.
I hired a couple of different social media promoters at different points in time who
Realize you're doing all that. That's cool.
yeah, who deluged social media with it. Of course, contacted all my friends and family. I went to the local library with a free copy, so you can find my book in our local library now. I went on some promotional marketing deals that my publisher had. So they will do some marketing, but it's at a cost to you, the
Mhm.
writer, but it's a discounted cost. But
Sure,
I
sure.
didn't do a lot of that because that costs money. I learned all about Twitter. Thank you, Dr. Karen Pryor. And then I went on there and what else? Made an author page on Facebook, made an author page on Amazon, Author Central, made a website. And some of these things worked well and some didn't work so well. You got to it's trial and error.
It really is.
But find out what has worked for other people. I found people to write blurbs for the covers of my books. There's other things I did. Yeah, interviews like this one we're doing now. I did some interviews. And I tried to get the book in two different actually, national bookstore chains. Did not succeed, but I tried. So yeah, it's not something natural to me. I don't know. Some of you writers out there may be more of a natural marketer than I am. So it's been a challenge.
Yeah.
But you definitely, you can't, it's not like the old days, or if they ever really existed, where you just write your book and sit back and watch it sell. You have to do some things.
It's not natural to me either. I mean, I have pretty much no formal training in marketing. Now with my, one with my job, it's at a nonprofit and where I write content for basically the marketers. And two, with wanting to promote my own author stuff, I've been doing some research into it. And I mean, even in the past year, I feel like I've learned some basic principles and done some things that have helped a bit. But I mean, it's not overnight success. It's never going to be. I mean, there's always maybe one in a million.
You never know. Yeah.
But for most of us, it's not. And it's just, again, it's you do the work of writing. It's hard, long work. You also do the work of editing. You also do the work of publicity and marketing and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's
right.
It's a lot of work if you want to get it out there. So
it is. But anything worthwhile, is it John Smith or somebody? Anything worthwhile takes effort. And it's
what's doing well.
The fun thing about it is it's your creation and you're putting it out there, and it's a part of yourself. So even though marketing may not be your big thing, it still kind of gives you a good feeling to do those things, I think.
Good. Yeah. It's been interesting. It's been a good journey to look into, and I'm still in that journey. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, keep going, man.
Okay. Yeah. So can you tell us about the book you're working on now, or
yeah.
Future?
Yeah. Just briefly. Yeah.
Tease a little bit.
It is a sequel, so it is the third and final book in what will be a trilogy. So I've got, again, Fire in the Bones and Nice Ear, and I'm not one of those writers who comes up with a title at the beginning.
I was going to ask you.
I have been working on this book for 3 years, and it doesn't have a title yet. Its title is third novel. So, but I'm pretty close, I think I'm pretty close. I think this summer I can definitely finish it. There's a tiny bit of drafting more to do, and then a bunch of editing.
Sure.
And yeah, it's gonna kind of bring everything in the first two books to a culmination. Luke is with the same girl he was halfway through the second book to the end of the second book, but they go through a lot of things with kind of being drawn into the things of the world and temptations and whatnot, and struggling with their own differences from each other and problems with family and with not having money, just pretty much ordinary things that a lot of us go through. So yeah, so I really have enjoyed this one too. I just yeah, I wish I had more time to work on it steadily so I could put out books more frequently. But
Yeah.
you know, I'm not putting pressure on myself. So
Good.
okay, the first one came out in 15, second one came out in 18. This one could come out in 21, but more likely 22.
Okay, I was gonna ask if there was a release date yet, but
Yeah, so I haven't even sent anything to the publisher yet
Right.
because, yeah, it's not there yet. It's not at that point yet where I could send it. So,
Cool.
but yeah, it's close, and yeah, I'm loving it. You know, I'm not rich, I'm not famous, and that's
Right.
you know that's so if you're bent on you have to be those things or writing's not going to succeed for you, then it may not work for you. But you know, I just enjoy it. It's something I do that's different from everything else I do, and get to share some of myself and my ideas with the world in a creative and dramatic way that entertains and pleases people. And so, hey,
yeah, hey, yeah.
and if I also make a few bucks doing that, wow, really?
Yeah.
You're going to pay me for this?
If you're
So,
so, I mean,
yeah, all the better.
go for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to ask. I mean, not necessarily for general advice, but I guess going back to like writing craft and such. What's a writing tip, or maybe a publishing tip you can offer that most people don't know or overlook? I'm sure you're familiar with what people don't know about writing.
That's a good question. Yeah, I have two things. I think one of them is from Faulkner. I think this first one might be from Faulkner. To stop, like if you have a goal, like I'm going to write so much each week or so much each day or once a month or whatever you're able to do, you know, is to stop writing in a given session before you finish. In other words, when you're on a roll, stop at some point there before you run out, so that when you go back to work on it next, you'll be fired up because you'll have that, you already know where you're going, you're in that momentum. And I just thought that was, you know, good advice.
I've heard you say that before for academic writing. I didn't know it was from Faulkner originally. So
I think it is. I'm not positive, and I should be because I'm supposed to be a Faulkner expert, but I think it is. The other thing I would say is write about something that you really care about and you're really interested in. Now, this could be, you know, fantasy's real big today, so I'm not going to say write about what you know, because a lot of people want to write fantasy, which is great. But write about something you care about and you're interested in. That way, no matter how the book does or whatever, you're still going to feel good about it because it's you and it's real and it's what you wanted to do.
There you go. Good advice. I think that was all the questions I had. Nate asked, do you find that working through drafting slowly can affect continuity and make it more difficult to find a natural plot flow? And I guess some of that is a time management question also.
Yes,
but,
that is a definite yes, Nick. That is a great question. And for me, I don't know if every writer's that way, and I'm pretty good at putting things down and picking them back up and just picking up where I left off if it's a reasonably short amount of time since I've been working on it. But frankly, sometimes with these books, I would go like nearly a whole semester without having gotten back to it. So yeah, what I typically have to do then when I get back to it, you're right, is go back from the beginning, read everything I've written thus far, get back in the mindset. What was I trying to do in this chapter? What am I working towards? Oh yeah, okay. And then eventually get back into it. So yeah, there's some, you know, it's like when you come back after a summer vacation and you start school again. There's some review or whatever you got to do at the beginning before you could really pick up and go on to new stuff. So yeah, that's definitely an issue for probably a lot of us writers who aren't doing it full time. So you're doing it whenever you can, here or there, little bits. But I would say, don't let that stop you. Persevere, because you're writing a book. That's something not everybody has done,
Mhm.
or you're writing a story, whatever. That's not something everybody has done. So yeah, keep at it. Even if you can just do a little bit here and there, and you got to keep going back and refreshing yourself. I think that's okay.
Yeah, I think I did one of my live videos, maybe the one from 4 weeks ago. It just says "Writing Woes, Let's Talk." If you go to my Facebook page, Samuel N. Harris, I talked about that a little bit because I had someone else ask that same question, or when I've been asking people from about their writing woes, I think someone said something like that, like you pick it up, put it down again. When you come back to it, whenever later, after interruptions, it's hard to get back into. And I was like, I get that because
Yeah.
I wrote most of my novel this past year. I also had a child this past year. So
you had some major interruptions. And,
I was getting toward the climax, or like a big thing had just happened in the turning point, and the heroes were dealing with the consequences of it, and that's where I stopped for like at least a month when Benny was born, probably.
Yeah.
And then a few chapters later, I was it was like the final showdown where the heroes were confronting the villain, and it was supposed to be very fast paced and climactic, and that was when we went out of town for Christmas, and so for also probably close to I didn't do much with it, so
Sure.
I don't know. I mean, it always feels like the parts that are supposed to be climactic in the story, I get interrupted between those.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I can't.
You just have to go back to it,
Yeah.
pick it up again, get back in the groove, get totally back in the mindset, and then you can, then when it comes out for the reader, it just looks smooth and it flows and you get that climactic action. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it does, it's I would imagine most of us, just have that struggle because I
Mhm.
mean, who has the time to just sit and write a novel straight through, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're independently wealthy.
Yeah, I can't really say much about preventing that. But
No, there's just ways to deal with it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm
Definitely
trying.
deal with it. Push through.
I had to
No
reread
matter how many. I mean, if you go back to it after a long time and it no longer interests you, okay, that's one thing. But for me, every time I go back to it, I'm like, oh
I'm like,
yes, now
I
I can work
want to
my
get back
book.
into this. Yeah.
And because I'm interested in it. So
Mhm.
that keeps you going.
Well, thanks for your insights. Where can people find you on social media? I know you mentioned.
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook.
It's Mark R. Harris, right?
Mark R. Harris.
I think
It's my author page.
I
You
think
can also,
in the event page if anyone's there.
and you can find me on YouTube. Mark R. Harris is my YouTube channel, and you can find my book on Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, and I have copies that I would be glad to sign. And yeah, if anybody wants to shell out a few bucks and buy a copy. But yeah, those are where you can find me.
Twitter, or are you not doing much with it?
Twitter, yeah, I'm on Twitter too.
I think it's
Mark R. Harris there too. I'm not on Twitter as frequently as I used to be, but
with
I need to
underscores.
get back.
Is it?
So
I think it's like Mark R. Harris with underscores. Okay.
yeah, that's right.
And so go follow him there. Okay.
Yeah, I'd be glad to follow you back. So yeah, thanks for having me on in this
Sure.
video series you're doing. I think it's cool.
Thanks for your insights, and I don't know what else to say. So yeah.
I'd say, hey, future writers out there or current writers, whatever, yeah, we're all in this together. Go for it.
Cool.
More power to you.
Okay. Well, thanks for being here, and keep writing. Anyone else? Nate just says thanks for the comments and the helpful insights. For anyone who wants to hear more, I mean, go follow Mark Harris at the place we just mentioned. For future live videos and other writing-related content from me, you can go to my link. Well, I'm also on Facebook and Twitter, of course, but I think in the event page for Facebook Live, you can find my new landing page, which has a link that has the words Chipper Maker in it for some reason, but it's my landing page for Fractured Heroes and for my newsletter or weekly updates. So sign up to get info about the story and about other future live discussions. And in the meantime, keep writing and keep on keeping on.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Sam.
Sure.